Welcome to Redefining Engagement. I'm Francesca Duma, Director of Audience Development and Strategy at Contribly. And in this show, I speak to leaders and innovators in the media industry so that we can bring tips, wisdom, ideas, and even some things to avoid so that we can all do more engagement better. So without further ado, let's move on to our next guest. Hi, Rianne. Thank you so much for joining and being willing to have a conversation around engagement. I'm really excited about talking about this with you specifically because your experience is potentially very different to a lot of other people that we've spoken to. And I think you'll have some amazing insights around what that is. Just to start off, would you like to introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about your career, please?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Rianna Roggema, and majority of my career actually was in Myanmar. So I'm from the Netherlands, but I spent most of my working career in Asia. And I came there at the beginning of 2014 when the internet just started. And so my initial experience is in tech startups for Rocket Internet. And so that is my original sort of first working experience. I then started an online marketing agency, IRE Digital, also in Myanmar. And so there I got a little bit more in-depth experience in how actual online marketing campaigns work. And that experience I took then into becoming the CEO of the largest local media brand for the younger generation, which was Duwoon. I sold my business to that brand, and then we integrated the agency into the media brand. And so my experience with engagement is on the side of marketing, on the side of tech platforms, I would say, and then also on the side of media.
I feel like you're going to have such amazing insights being on the marketing side as well as having experience in the editorial side. So my first question really is, what would you define as audience engagement? What does that mean to you?
It's a very open question. The first and the easiest that comes to mind, I think, when I had my marketing agency 2017 to 2020, I think engagement was all about like likes and shares and clicks and comments. So that was, I think that is like the easiest definition of engagement on social media. For me, it's very shallow because you can actually quite push this. And I think when you buy advertisement on Facebook and you optimize for likes, they will just send it to people that are just clicking like on everything. So whether you can then really say that, oh, we have so much engagement, I'm not sure. I do think in media, it gives some sort of indication, because I think in media, when you publish your articles, or at least the links of your articles on social media, you will see a difference, right? So maybe as an absolute number, it's not so relevant, but you will see, oh, this is a topic that people are commenting on and that people are really like care about. So there, I think you can get some indication of what people care about. But then I think it's more the topic, right? I don't know, Kim Kardashian is getting a divorce, then people are maybe have an opinion about this rather than that people are per se interacting with your brand as such.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think this is the most standard definition of engagement, I would say.
So you're massively linking that engagement piece with relevance, and the way that you saw it in the past was potentially more based on social. That was my next question, was like, how has your definition changed? So maybe my question now is, what do you think it's going to look like in the future? If the past was social, now it's about relevance, comments, actual engagement in terms of two-way conversation.
Yeah.
What is the future of that?
So my experience changed a little bit because being in media in Myanmar, Facebook is the internet. So even as a media brand, you might have a website, realistically, 99% of people that read your content is on social media. And even it's quite common practice to just post the entire article on Facebook. Which obviously is wildly different from where we are in Europe. And also this is 4 years ago, and we are already 4 years further again in Europe. I think for media brands now it's much more important to capture their own audience, right? So it's not so much as like who's responding to you on other platforms, but it's how many people are actually within your own brand logged in and are actually engaging on your platform. And then I think the comment section in your brand is a much better indicator than the comment section on a Facebook page. If people really are logged in on your platform and engaging there, I think that is more engagement. I would mention one thing also, which is very offline and very not sort of sexy engagement metric. But when I joined Doon, I wanted to know what people really think of the brand. So we did a very in-depth qualitative study where we had round tables, where we had interview sessions, where we did group sessions with our readers and also with non-readers, to really understand what their real engagement was with the brand and what their real, like, what kind of place does your brand play in their lives. And this I found super interesting, because then you get really, even with relatively small groups, quite quickly you get to hear how people really engage with your brand or not engage with your brand at all, which you don't want to hear, but you will hear it often. So I quite like that in-depth study on what users think of your brand as well.
I love the idea of sexy engagement metrics.
It's not
That's
like you bring
quite a
10
funny
people
way
in
of
the
wording
room
it.
It's not like, oh, we have 10 million plus engagement, rather than we just put 10 people in a room and ask them what they thought of my brand. That's not so. It's nothing fancy, but it's super helpful.
And in your experience, what about what should your audience engagement strategy deliver on? Like, what are the aims behind engagement in your opinion, especially for news brands?
Yeah, I have the idea, but this is based on people that I've talked to and not firsthand experience, because I've never worked for a media brand that actually has a subscription model, not directly, indirectly, but not directly. That real engagement with the brand is a good predictor of if people are willing to pay. That when we talk about implementing paywalls, that when we talk about implementing hard paywalls, so not reading any articles if you don't pay, that they work mostly with people that are very engaged with the brand. And what engagement then means, I think it's about how often you visit the website, so like the frequency. But also, from what I understand, comments is a very good driver for logins and subscriptions. So if you talk about the future, I have the idea, I don't know if that's the future, it's kind of the now. I think brands need to think about this.
And continuing on that point of measurement, so you've talked about, okay, to measure if we're doing it properly or not, we're measuring frequency, we're measuring comments. Is there anything else that you have experienced or you think that we should be measuring, or that we measure to see what this engagement looks like?
I think these are the most standard ones. And so with the note that obviously it makes a big difference if you measure like on your own platforms what type of engagement there is, versus if you take a proper random sample of your target audience. Let's say we had, for us was the young generation between 18 to 30. And then if you take a random sample of people and just ask them about their news consumption, obviously you get very different answers than when you take the people that are already on your platform, liking on your Facebook page. It's very different type of numbers. So I think you at least need these two, like what happens on your own platforms, but also like a check of an independent reference group. I think you need those both.
I don't think that's necessarily happening as much as we'd like. I think
No, I
in
think media
no,
companies are really bad at this. This is my
I would
marketing
agree.
background. Yeah.
I think that's the thing. I think, in my opinion, at least, to add to that, I feel like they're within a lot of the market of the media brands. You've got the marketing team, if you've got one, and the brand team on one
Mm,
side, and then the editorial team that sit on a different side. And
mhm,
actually, they're measuring completely different things, but they're playing the same game. They've
mhm,
got the same North Star. They've got the same thing that they're trying
mhm,
to achieve. But
mhm,
that
mhm.
definition of engagement, this is why it's so interesting to talk to you,
Yeah.
is quite different. And I think
Yeah.
that there needs to be more of a way that those two kind of merge. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, but that is definitely my
Yeah.
opinion on it so far.
No, I definitely agree with you. I think if media brands have a marketing team, which is already an if, I agree with you. And if they do, I think nowadays they're often focused, they're like performance marketing teams. So they're focused on like subscriptions, on data, on page views, this type of stuff. If you think about brand, like what does the brand stand for? And what do people think of your newspaper as a brand? I think very few newspapers think of that in a marketing type of way. The newsroom and the journalist will think of that in a content type of way. But often in a brand way, there is no such thing. And this is why when I started at the media company that I was CEO of, the first thing I did was do such a proper brand study, which was, I really had to explain it because everybody was like, why? This is unnecessary. We don't have to do this. But I thought it was very important. And and yeah, we realized that people really didn't love us as much as we were hoping. that but it's better that
You
you
never want
know,
to hear
right?
that. You
You
never
don't
want to
want to
hear
hear
that.
it. You don't want to hear it, but it's better you know so you can do something about it because it gives you super insightful action points as well when you hear from your customers why they like you or why they don't like you. And it really gives you like, oh, then this is what we could work on, or this is what we should be working towards. Yeah, it's very helpful.
I think there's that what you were saying is that there's that overall proposition that your brand is trying to overlay to everyone. There's the content
Yeah.
in that. And then going back to that engagement, you only really link the top part if you're engaging properly. You only
Hmm.
understand, you only push it if you're engaging properly so that you know what you stand for. What would you say are the biggest hurdles? Why aren't we, what's stopping brands from engaging more and better?
Culture, I think. I think newspapers from the print media, from the print era, are very much used to making something and sending it out and having this attitude that, like, we know what's good for people. This is why we are media makers. We make what people want. We know this rather than of course, and a lot of journalists have very good ideas, have this like magical sparkle where they know like this is something that we need to go after. But I also think there is not a single industry where companies can be like this. Like, I just make something because I know what people want. Every other company, when you make a product or a plate or a cup or I don't know, you have to engage with your audience and think of, oh, they don't like the cup because the handle is too big or too small, or it breaks too easy, or things like this. But in media, we're not really used to that, I think, from our historical background. And so I think culture is the biggest issue when it comes to accepting that it's a two-way street with your audience and it's not just a one-way direction of sending information and news and media.
I couldn't agree more at all. And what about, let's talk a bit about like strategies, best practice. Like what
Yeah,
strategies have proven most effective in engaging audiences in your experience?
yeah. So I think when it comes to that more superficial type of engagement, I think it's a thin balance. The media brand I was working for was a very popular media brand in the sense of like it was mostly sports, entertainment, and this kind of thing. And there I find when it's about the right people, when it's about the right celebrities, whatever, then you know that people will be very active with it. But I think the main thing for us was to talk to people. Make sure that you actually get your audience in a room. And I know there have been experiments of a colleague of mine, which I really liked, of building like an audience panel. So we did it like the official way with a research agency and stuff like this, but I think you can also do it a little bit more informal, where you just have like 100 or 200 people that are from your readers that you can ask regularly for feedback. A colleague of mine did this, and I thought this was a brilliant idea. So that would be another good option.
You're from the Netherlands. I'm aware of a brand in the Netherlands as well who have a 50,000 people audience panel as well, and they engage with them every day. And it's fascinating
cool.
how it's so cool. It's so cool.
I think this is very smart. And you have the technology, right? I mean, you can send them quick surveys, or you can bring 10 of them every month, bring 10 of them into a lunchroom and just talk to them. That's a very good idea.
And in your opinion, in what point of the process should we be considering audience engagement? When we're creating our content, where does it kind of sit? Let's say in the news, we're creating content today. Do you see it as something that happens before we start writing the article or the content? Is it something that happens after? Like, where does this engagement piece sit?
I would say it's important. I would say it's important before, because an old colleague of mine, Dmitry Shishkin, he has the user needs model, which I really like, where he talks a little bit about, it's not per se the topic that you send out. Like, we could all agree that it's important to write about Gaza right now, but people might want to have a different user need, meaning sometimes you just want to be informed about facts. Sometimes you might want to have a backstory. Sometimes you might want something that inspires you about someone who has done something phenomenal. So I think journalists need to think about this a little more. Like, okay, the topic, of course, the journalist knows really well what's an important topic to deliver. And that's also not always what everybody wants, right? Because journalism is not just about giving people what they want. It's also about addressing certain issues that you think are important to be talked about. But you can then still choose, how do you deliver it? Like, do you address the topic with a background story? Do you address the topic with just a quick update and information? Or like, what is for people the nicest way to receive it? And this is, I think, you need to think of in advance. And after, of course, I think is like a continuous loop, because after you will get feedback and people will tell you what they don't like, and then after you will see whether you got it right or wrong. I mean, journalism is not I don't think it's a black and white situation, right? You also don't know 100%, even if you listen to everyone, you don't know 100% if you're going to do it right. So, of course, you need to.
It's never going to be right for everyone, is it?
Yeah. That neither. Yeah, no, that neither. And I think this is something that's a good point, because I do think that this is something that is also something people need to get better at, is this targeting of different content to different people, and a unique layout of the newspaper for everyone. I think that's a very important thing as well.
So in your opinion, what do you think the biggest pitfalls are in terms of engagement? What are the challenges that we're looking at when we start these initiatives?
One of the things that came to mind when I was thinking about this before we were talking is that I think one of the main issues for media brand in this age of AI and social media and everybody being able to create content, but also an era in which the media is being attacked as unreliable and biased, etc., is for media brands to create trust. And I think I've seen some media brands do some very successful things, I think, where they like engage with the audience, where they talk to the audience about like, how do we do this, how did we make this story, why do we come up with this story, a personal message from the editor or a personal message from the editor-in-chief. And I think that is really interesting, because I think that can go both ways, right? So I think that if done well, that creates trust. And I don't know if it's the right way to say if done well, but when you do that, even with the best intentions, it can still fall both ways in terms of, is it going to create trust, or is it going to actually sit not right with people? I think this is an interesting experiment that you would have to talk to like an editor-in-chief or so that does this on a regular basis, to see what their experience is with, is it working or not. I would be quite curious as well. But I find that quite a nice step, this openness and this transparency about journalism and the approach.
Yeah, I totally love that as well. And then from one to 10, if you were going to like rate how important engagement is, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest in terms of what we're doing day to day in media, where would you say
Yeah.
that sits?
Let me say a 7.
Okay.
I think it's super important to talk to your users and to know what is their desires and what they like. But I'm saying a 7 because I also think, like, how they say that always, like, if Ford would have asked people what they wanted, they would say a faster horse. And I think with journalism is a little bit like this. Journalists are also really good at making the agenda and not like following demand, right? So yes, the engagement is really important, but also I think one of the core things of media and journalism is to set the agenda. So sometimes you're going to give people something they didn't ask for. And I think that's really good.
They didn't even know they wanted it.
They didn't know they wanted it. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
didn't
And maybe they didn't want it in the end, but that doesn't mean it was bad. It was bad journalism. It could be still very good journalism.
I absolutely love that. Well, Rianne, thank you so much for your time
No problem.
yeah, have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.